There's a black t-shirt hanging in a store right now that costs $8. Next to it, there's another black t-shirt that costs $240. They're both cotton, both made in the same country, both will fade after 20 washes. The difference is 4 centimeters of embroidered text on one of them. 4 centimeters that somehow justify a 3,000% markup. You already know which one people are buying. This isn't a story about fashion. It's about an economic phenomenon that's become so normalized, we've stopped questioning it entirely. We call it brand premium, but that's just a polite way of describing one of the most successful psychological operations in modern commerce. And the numbers behind it are so staggering, so disconnected from material reality, that when you actually break them down, the whole thing starts to look less like business and more like coordinated delusion. So let's talk about what happens when logos become more valuable than the products they're printed on, and why that shift might be one of the most important economic stories nobody's really covering. The year is 1984. A young designer named Tinker Hatfield walks into a meeting at Nike headquarters with a sketch that will change everything. It's a shoe. More specifically, it's a shoe with a visible air pocket in the sole, the Air Max 1. But here's what matters. Hatfield isn't just designing footwear, he's designing a status object, something that doesn't just perform a function, but broadcasts identity. The shoe costs Nike roughly $28 to manufacture. They sell it for $100. That's a healthy margin, sure, but it's still tethered to something real. Material costs, labor, logistics. The math makes sense even if it's aggressive. Fast forward to today, the Travis Scott X Air Jordan 1 Low drops at $150 retail. The actual manufacturing cost? Probably $32 when you account for inflation and improved supply chains. But here's where it gets strange. Within minutes of release, that shoe is reselling for $800, then $1,200, then $2,000. Not because the material's improved, not because it lasts longer or performs better, because a rapper's name is attached to it, because artificial scarcity was engineered into the release, because the logo became worth more than the object. And Nike knows this. In fact, they've architected their entire business model. In 2023, Nike spent $3.9 billion on marketing. For context, they spent roughly $1.8 billion on research and development. More than twice as much money went into making you think about the swoosh than went into actually improving the products the swoosh is printed on. That's not a critique, that's just math, and it tells you exactly what business they're really in. They're not selling shoes, they're selling the idea that the shoes mean something. Let's zoom out for a second, because this pattern repeats almost every consumer category now. Supreme sells a brick, an actual clay brick with their logo on it. It retails for $30. It's a brick. It does brick things. It's in there. Within hours, it's flipping for over $1,000 on resale markets. A fucking brick! Canada Goose sells a parka for $1,200. The materials cost them maybe $180. The manufacturing adds another $70, so we're at $250 already. The remaining $950 is the logo. That's the brand story about Arctic exploration and celebrity endorsements. That's you paying to wear a billboard. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. It works. Not just sometimes. Almost always. There are entire categories of goods now where the brand premium is the entire product, where the material object is essentially a vehicle for the logo, and the economy has restructured itself around this. In 1990, the average American household spent roughly 4% of their income on apparel. By 2020, that number had dropped to around 3%. We're buying fewer clothes, but we're paying more to buy them. Because increasingly, we're not buying clothes. We're buying brands, and brands have no ceiling. A white t-shirt from Uniqlo costs you $15. A white t-shirt from Balenciaga costs you $650. It's the same shirt. Same cotton weight, same fit, same manufacturer in some cases. But one has a logo that costs $590 million to build. Over 20 years of marketing campaigns and fashion week appearances and influencer seeding, you're not paying for cotton, you're paying rent on someone else's intellectual property. So how did we get here? How did we go from buying things because they work to buying things because of what they signal? The shift starts in the 1980s with the rise of lifestyle branding. Before that, companies made products and advertised features. Ford didn't sell you an identity, they sold you a car that went fast or got good mileage. Levi's sold you durable pants. The product was the message. But then, Nike hires a small ad agency in Portland and they create Just Do It. Suddenly, they're not selling running shoes, they're selling self-actualization. They're selling the version of you that wakes up at 5 a.m. and runs in the rain, the version that doesn't make excuses. And you can access that version, they suggest, by buying the shoes. It's brilliant. And it's borderline sociopathic, because what they've done is take an internal psychological desire, the desire to become better, and externalized it into a product. The shoe becomes a totem, a symbol, and symbols can be priced at whatever people are willing to pay to participate in the story. Apple perfects this a decade later. They don't sell you a computer, they sell you membership in the tribe of people who think different. The hardware is almost secondary. What matters is the glowing logo on the back of your laptop when you sit in a coffee shop. What matters is the aesthetic, the signal. And once that signal has value, the price becomes almost irrelevant. By the 2000s, this is everywhere. Luxury brands that used to cater exclusively to the ultra-wealthy realize there's a bigger market in the middle class if they just lower the barrier to entry slightly. Enter the $300 logo t-shirt, the $1,500 handbag. Not cheap, but attainable if you save, if you sacrifice other purchases, if you go into debt. And people do. Credit card debt in the US crosses $1.1 trillion by 2023. A significant chunk of that is discretionary spending on branded goods. People are financing logos, paying interest on symbols. But here's where it gets even weirder. The most successful brands today aren't necessarily making the best products anymore. In fact, there's often an inverse relationship. Take Supreme again. The quality of their clothing is middling at best. Anyone who's actually worn it will tell you the hoodies shrink, the stitching is inconsistent, the prints crack after a few washes. But it doesn't matter, because Supreme's real product isn't the hoodie, it's the drop, the scarcity, the hunt. They've gamified consumption and turned shopping into a status competition. And in that game, quality is irrelevant. What matters is whether you got it or it's sold out. Louis Vuitton is similar. In internal documents leaked a few years ago, their cost of goods sold on handbags averaged around 12% of retail price, meaning a $2,000 bag cost them roughly $240 to make. Now, part of that is genuine craftsmanship, Italian leather, skilled labor, quality control, but most of it is brand equity, the LV monogram, the heritage story, the celebrity endorsement. You're paying $1,800 for the story, and that story is mostly fictional. Because here's the thing about luxury heritage, most of it is invented. Louis Vuitton started as a trunk maker in 1854. They made sturdy luggage. That's it. The association with glamour, with high society, with exclusivity was retro-engineered in the 20th century through marketing. They built the myth, then charged you to participate. And once you understand that, you start seeing it everywhere. Rolex tells you their watches are investments, but a Rolex depreciates the moment you buy it, unless it's a specific model with artificial scarcity. Most watches lose 20 to 30% of their value immediately. The investment narrative is marketing. What really great is the ability to show people you spent $10,000 on a watch. Now, let's talk about the uncomfortable math, because when you actually run the numbers on brand premiums, they start to look irrational very quickly. The average growth margin in the fashion industry is around 50%, meaning for every dollar of revenue, 50 cents is gross profit after you subtract the cost of making the product. That's healthy, that's sustainable. But luxury brands operate at gross margins of 70, 80%. Hermes, which makes the Birkin bag, operates at a gross margin of 68%. LVMH, 67%. Chanel doesn't disclose exact numbers, but estimates put them near 75%. These aren't margins, these are tithes. And it's not because their products cost more to make. An Hermes bag costs roughly $800 to manufacture, according to industry estimates. They sell for $12,000 minimum. Some Birkins go for $200,000 at auction. The delta between cost and price has become so vast, it's essentially arbitrary. They charge what they can get away with, and what they can get away with keeps going up. This creates a weird economic distortion, because once brands realize they can charge almost anything as long as they control the narrative, they stop competing on product quality. They compete on hype, on scarcity, on celebrity association, on waiting lists. Hermes famously won't sell you a Birkin bag unless you've already spent tens of thousands on other items first. You have to prove your loyalty, earn your way up. It's not a store anymore, it's a medieval guild.